Today I want to show you how to model a gaming PC in Blender 3.5. Let's start working on this case that you see on your screen right now, and then in subsequent lessons we'll work on the rest of the elements. So without wasting any more time, let's go. So here we are in Blender, and this is the default view when you open up a new project. We have the default light, the default camera, and default cube. Now, to make sure you know exactly which keys I've pressed on the keyboard or which button I've pressed on the mouse, we have this screencast gizmo here. So if I press Shift, of course, it will show that I've pressed Shift. So Shift N, it'll show Shift N. If I press the right mouse button, of course, it'll show you the right mouse button and the middle mouse button. So just in case you're wondering which button I've pressed at any given time, just look at the screencast down here. With that out of the way, I just want to go ahead and select the default camera and light and delete them. Now we're left with the default cube. Just in case you don't have the cube, let me just get rid of it. You can press Shift A to add a new primitive. And of course, it's a cube that I want to add because we're working with a rectangular object, a computer. So there we have it. Another thing I want to do as we get started is go inside the shading settings here, and I want to enable the cavity just to make sure we have those conspicuous edges like that. I also want to go back in here and change this to matte cap. That gives it some nice shadows as we work on the object. Now, with that done, I also want to split up my screen because I want to add the reference image. Remember, we can split the screen and change this to any editor we want. And I want to change this to the image editor because this is the way we display an image. Let me just quickly go inside the folder that I'll be working in, and that's Gaming PC 2. And I'll provide this folder with all these images in the description below so you can download it and follow along. And what I want is let me see, Gaming PC 1. Yes, I just want to use this image, zoom out, we're recreating this. So let me just drag this up to that point, and now at least we have something to look at as we build it right here. Now, of course, by looking at this reference image, we don't know exactly what are the measurements, but I went ahead and took the measurements of my own PC, which is right here on my side, and we'll use those measurements. So from the back to the front, my PC is 38 centimeters long. From the top to the bottom, it's 42 centimeters tall. And from the left to the right, it's 18 centimeters wide. So let's go ahead and use those dimensions right here. So with the cube selected, I'll press N to open up the N menu, and we want to work on the dimensions here. So of course, remember that this green line is the one running from the left to the right, and that's the width. And like I've said, it's 18 centimeters. So this is 2 meters right now. So I'll change that to 0.18 centimeters. That's 18 centimeters. And the height from here to here, it's 42 centimeters. So in the Z axis, 0.42 centimeters, 0.42 meters. And from the front to the back, it's 38 centimeters. So 0.38 meters. There we go. So let me just zoom in on that, and now here we are. So now I want this object to be resting on the ground here, on the floor, on this grid. So I'll hit 1 on the numpad on my keyboard to move to the right side. If I rotate it once again, we're rotating this way until we have it flat on this side. And then I'll hit G on the keyboard to grab it, and then Z to constrain it to the Z axis, that's up and down. And I'll drag it, and just to make sure we're moving in small increments, I'll hold down Shift and put it right there. The next thing I want to do is apply all transforms that we've changed. Remember, we've changed the dimensions, we've changed the scale, we've changed the location on the Z axis. So I'll just go ahead and hit Ctrl A, and I can apply each individually or select all transforms to apply scale, rotation, and location. And before I apply the transforms, let me just hit outside. Notice here the Z axis is at this specific location, and these are the scales. So now when we apply transforms, look at what happens to those values on the end menu. The scale has gone back to 1 on all axes. Of course, there are more tutorials on why you need to apply your transforms, but in a nutshell, if you don't apply your transforms, your mesh will misbehave. So now that we've applied transforms, let's go ahead and shade it smooth, shade smooth, and now you will see this weird behavior here. And to correct this, let's go inside object data, expand normals, and auto smooth. Now a quicker way to do that is if I undo that, if I right click here, you'll notice we have shade smooth and shade auto smooth. When I click shade auto smooth, look at what happens to auto smooth here. So right click, shade auto smooth, and it's gone ahead and applied auto smooth for angles that are more than 30 degrees. Now, of course, these are 90-degree angles. All right, so now what we just created is this part here from all the way from the back up to this point, downwards and going back. Now let's go ahead and block out this front face. I just want to go ahead and select this, Shift D to duplicate it, right click to let go of it, and while it's still selected, hit G to grab it and then drag it in the X axis. So hit X, and of course I want to shorten it because from here to here it's about, on my computer, it's about 4 centimeters. So while this is selected on the X axis, it's 0.04 centimeters, just like that. Grab it and then hit X to constrain it to the X axis, and then just drag it up to somewhere there. They don't need to touch for now. So now that's the front part. Now that we have that, let me just go ahead and save this first because I hadn't saved it. So I'll go in here and I'll call it Gaming PC. Save that. All right, so we have the front and the main body. So I'll hit tab to change to edit mode. Now we're editing this one. This is not editable because it's a separate object. If I hit tab again, that changes back to object mode. If I select this and hit tab, now we're able to edit it, but not this, because remember they are separate objects. So let me go inside here, then tab, zoom in more. So let's change to face selection mode by selecting this. This is the edge selection mode and this is vertex mode. So when you're in this mode, you're able to select faces. When you're in this mode, you're able to select edges. You can't select a face. So you can select edges, and when you're in this mode, notice now you can see the vertices, and you can select vertices and drag them around. So let's switch to face mode. The other way to toggle between these three modes is to use the keyboard keys from number 1 to number 3 right below the escape button on your keyboard. So if you hit number 1, that changes to vertex mode. If you hit number 2, it changes to edge mode, and number 3 changes to face mode. So now enough of that. Select this face, rotate with the middle mouse button, And while this is still selected, hold down Shift and select this. Now you have both of them selected, and we want to insert these faces. Let me show you what inserting means. So hit the letter I on your keyboard and then push it inwards just like that, and I think that's enough. So basically we've just created some more detail on this face and this other face to allow us to still have these edges if we get rid of this face. So let me select this alone. Now this is not selected. So while this is selected, if I hit P on my keyboard and select selection, now that's a separate object from this object. So if I hit tab to go into object mode, I can now select this face as a separate object. This is a separate object, and this is a separate object. So now we have 3 objects in here. So if I select this face and grab it, then hit Y, I can drag it along the Y axis, and now we can see the inside of this comp. And notice now we still have this edge. We still have this edge right here. So what I want to do is just leave that right there. And on this other side, we can do the same. So I'll hit tab to switch to edit mode, select this, P, then selection, and now that's a separate object on its own. Tab to switch to object mode, and now this is a separate object. So G, then Y to constrain it to the Y axis, and now this is what we're left with. And of course we'll be back to work on that. Of course, as you can see, this is glass on this side and the other side is metallic. By the time we finish, this will be glass and this will be metallic, and it will have the same color and materials as the main body. But for now, let me select this and rename it. It's always good to name and label every single element you have in your artwork. So this is the right cover. So selecting this is the left cover. Left cover. Selecting this. Main body, and selecting this is the front face. All right, so now we can go ahead and hide some of these parts. For example, we can hide the left and right covers. We can also hide the main body because now we want to work on this front area. So now we're left with this, but we can always unhide them by clicking that. All right, so now this is what we're left with. Let me hit Control S to save my changes so far. And now to create this sort of protruding part here, and I want to hit Tab to switch to edit mode. Now I can select faces and edges. And what I want to do is hit Control R to create a loop cut. So Control R, we can create a loop cut on this side or here. I want to create a loop cut right here and then place it right there, just like that. And now let me switch to face mode. So number 3, and now there we go. While the face is still selected, I'll hit S for scale. And that will reduce the face size just like that. And now what I want to do is hit G on the keyboard and X to constrain it to the X axis and pull it forward like that. I think that's a good distance. Now if I zoom in on this, notice we have this tiny ledge right here. So zooming in on this, while the face is still selected, if I hit I, we can insert it. So I'll start dragging my mouse, but I'll hold down Shift to move in small increments. And I think that's good enough. Then I'll go ahead and hit I once again, because notice after this tiny ledge, we also have another ledge here. So I'll hit I on the keyboard. Let's insert it once again. Up to that point, I think that's good enough. And now, of course, hit G on the keyboard and then X, then push it backwards while holding down Shift to move in small increments, just like that. So if I zoom in on it, this is how it looks. There we go. So let me zoom out on this. So the next thing we want to do is create this sort of indent right here. So that means let's create some loop cuts. Control R, and before you press anything, roll your mouse wheel upwards or forward to increase the number of loop cuts. You can increase them as much as you want. I need 2. So click without moving them and click again to commit. And now here's how it looks. Select this edge and this edge. Let's also select these tiny edges on the ledges, and that one. Then S and Z, just like that. All right, there we go. Save that. The next thing I want to do is, first of all, switch to face mode. Select these 3 faces, and I want to Shift D, duplicate. And now it's duplicated. Right click to release it. The next thing I want to do is separate it from this to make it its own object. So P, then by selection, now it's its own object. If I hit Tab to get out of edit mode, click outside, I can select it or select this. So if I select it, I'll call it mesh or front mesh, and that's what will form this mesh right here. If I zoom in, this is a mesh. We'll use that to create that mesh. So let me hide it, and now we're back to the front face. Tab to switch back inside, and now we want to get rid of all this. So I'll select this face, turn all around, hold down Control and select this, and that will select every face between the first face I selected and the second face I selected. So I'll go ahead and hit delete, and I'll say faces. So now all that is gone. So far, that's what we have. Next, let's also select these 2 and delete them. Delete the faces. And now we're left with this open space like that. Now let's switch to edge mode, because we want to extrude these edges to create this angled edge right here. These angled edges. And let me select this edge and this edge. And basically what I want to do is hit E to extrude. And if I zoom in, hit number 1 on the keyboard to change to side view. That's how it looks. I can hit G to drag it backwards like that. And number 3 to look at it from the front like that. So G once again and Y to push it leftwards. And let's go ahead and do the same for this lower part. So extrude, G to grab, Y to push it to the left. Hold down Shift to place it right on the edge. Number 1 to move to the side view. G to grab it, and X to constrain it to the X axis. G once again, then Z to constrain it to the Z axis. just like that. And the next thing I want to do is, let's go in here while we're still in edge mode. Next thing we want to do is select this edge alone and this edge on the other side. So we only have this edge selected together with this. Let me make sure they're selected. Then hit F to create a face. Then I'll select this small edge and this other small edge. F to create another face. Just like that. So now let me zoom in on this part. And what I want to do is merge. First of all, let me zoom out. Switch to face mode. Select this face and this face. Let me switch to the front side. Then grab by G. Then Y to constrain it to the Y. I just wanted to make sure it's positioned right on the edge like that. Now if we zoom in on this, while these two are still selected, I want to hit G and Y and hold down Shift to make sure it's at the very edge right there. Now let's zoom in here, and I want to switch to vertex mode. So vertex mode, I want to select this vertex and this other vertex. Now those two vertices are selected. Let me zoom out so you can see. With these two vertices selected, and remember I first chose this vertex that's on this part, and then the second one that's on this part. And if I hit M on the keyboard, that will bring up the merge context menu. We can merge the two vertices at a specific point, and in this case we want them to merge at the last vertex we selected. So select that, and now they've merged right there. Let me zoom out and let's go down here. Select this vertex and this second one, hit M, join at the last one. So there we go. I think that's good. Now we can go ahead and do the same for this other side, or let me just hit 3 to switch to the front side, or we can hit Ctrl R to create a loop cut, and when that yellow line appears, click to create the loop cut, and don't move the loop cut to the right or left, just click again to commit. And now I want to go ahead and select everything on this side. Let me switch to X-ray mode to make sure I select even the vertices that are in the back, and I'll select them like that, then delete all of them. Delete vertices like that. Now we're left with 1/2. If I switch to the front view, if I select everything by A and go inside modifier, we can use the mirror modifier to mirror this in the Y, not in the X. Let's get rid of the X-ray mode, and now as you can see, we've mirrored everything we did on the left on the right. So now while it's still mirrored, if we make any change on this side, we see the same changes on the other side. So for example, if I hit G and drag this, as you can see, the changes take effect on the other side as well. Let me escape from there. There we go.
And if you like what you learned from this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps. It tells the YouTube algorithm to show it to more people, to recommend it to more people, and so more people will get to learn Blender.
So if I hit Tab on my keyboard, now we have a front side. And now if I unhide our front mesh,
it will occupy that part. But now remember, we also have this area here. So first of all, let me hide that for a second. If we go to the front side and hit tab to switch to edit mode, select this, hit tab to switch to edit mode. I want to select these two vertices right there, and while they're still selected, hold down shift to select these two as well. So now we have 4 of them selected, and I want to hit G and Y to drag them inwards like that to create that effect. Oh wait, let me hit escape. I notice we also need to select these 2 inner vertices because we want to move everything here and here. G, Y to constrain it to the Y axis. Hold down shift to move in small increments. And now we have that effect right there. Tab to leave that. And now you will notice we've lost all these angles we had right here. Let's see how we can sort out this angle problem right here. So if we go to normals and say maybe 10 degrees, any angle above 10 degrees will be visible to us, and that's what that's all about. All right, so there we have that. Select this, tab. Now what I want to do is switch to edge mode. Select this upper edge like that, and while I'm in the front view, I'll just hit 3 on the numpad. Now we're in the front view. This edge is selected. I'll hit E on the keyboard to extrude downwards and select Z to constrain it to the Z axis like that, up and down, up to that point. And now of course it's mirrored on this side. If I switch to perspective view, of course it's mirrored. If I move it, of course it shows that it's mirrored. So let me escape that. Let me switch to front view once again. What I want to do is switch to vertex mode. Select this vertex and select this second vertex. Hit M last. So now those two are combined. All right, so that looks like that. So now the next thing I want to do is switch back to the front side, then select this edge down here and do the same thing we did up there. So let me zoom in. While this is selected, extrude upwards, Z to constrain it up to that point. Switch to vertex mode, select this vertex and that, M last. So now this part is almost covered. Let's switch to edge mode. I'll select this edge and this edge, then hit F to create a face, and now that's covered. Then I'll select this and hit F to cover it. So now that's covered like that. So now we've created this mesh out here. That's why we don't need this front mesh anymore. In fact, let me just delete it. All right, so switching back to object mode, that's how this looks. I think we're getting somewhere, but now we need to separate the mesh from this outer casing. So switching back to edit mode, I want to select all the faces. So switch to face select mode with number 3. Face, 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 and face. You can't select this side because this is just a mirrored. This is just mirrored. It's not yet a mesh. Once we apply it, that's when it becomes a mesh. We can select all this, but I just remembered we actually need to first of all turn it into a mesh. Let me just switch to object mode. go inside modifiers and let's apply this mirror modifier. So click this drop down menu, apply. Now it doesn't have a mirror. If I select it and go back into edit mode, now this is actually a mesh. Before we apply the mirror, this side was just a representation of a mesh, but it was not a mesh. You can learn more about these modifiers when you have time. So now let's go ahead and select every single face on this mesh right here, like that. Then of course, to separate it, hit P, then separate the selection. Now going into object mode, this is an object on its own and we can drag it outside, and this is an object on its own. Now notice the names, because this is derived from this, it has the extension of 001. So selecting this, let's call it the mesh front mesh, just like that. And notice we can have a space on the names or just have them combined. It doesn't really matter, but whatever naming convention you decide to go with, it's always a nice thing to stick to it. So I think I'll just stick to that camel case. So I think we're now getting somewhere with this. The next thing we want to do is now actually create the mesh itself. And that's what we will do in the next lesson. So stay tuned.
So that was just the first lesson in this Blender modeling series. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like it? Do you want us to continue working on this gaming PC until we have every part? I'm talking about the GPU, the RAM, the hard disk, the motherboard, the CPU, the PSU, everything that makes up a gaming PC. Would you like us to continue working on this? Let me know what you think about it, and if I realize that enough people actually want us to continue, of course this is going to be a full-blown course on its own. Also, if you want to get notified as soon as I publish a brand new Blender modeling course or tutorial, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification, and that will make sure the YouTube algorithm recommends my videos to you. Otherwise, my name is Ken the Polymath, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Peace.